event in our inaugural session, or semester we can call it perhaps, of the Vancouver Flying University, which is an independent civic project that was initiated and organized with Anne Johal. Anne, maybe if you just want to stand for a second so people can see. Hello, Anne Johal. Sabina Bitter, who's at the back in the red t-shirt, who's also videotaping. Helmut Weber, who's not here at the moment, he's back in Vienna. And myself, Jeff Dirksen. The initiative is launched, or kind of uses a platform of the show We Declare Spaces of Housing, which is a show at Gallery Gachet. It's up until the 27th of September with Sabina Bitter and Helmut Weber. It's a show that discusses the spaces where decisions of housing, decisions that affect housing are made. So we have a series of events continuing through to the end of October for the first semester of the Vancouver Flying University. And the notion of a flying university is picked up from Poland and Hungary, which was the way that public intellectuals and people who were interested in discussing the fate of those countries and cities at the time were used this as a method to skirt state oppression. So there's certainly similarities happening today as well. So tonight, our panel is Urban Frontiers, Gentrification, and Otherwise. We added the otherwise because we want to have it just end with gentrification. The whole project is put together through a series of funding from the Canada Council, SFU English Department, SFU Conference Funding, Gallery Gachet, the Ends Well Foundation, and of course, all the volunteer labor that we've been putting into it along with lots of other people, particularly people at the Gallery Gachet. I'd like to thank particularly Urban Ustendi and all the people who put time into helping us get this together. So tonight the format will be that Neil Smith will speak for half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that. And then we'll turn to our panelists, Nick Blomley from SFU, Laura Trapp from Pivot Legal, Dave Eby from Pivot Legal as well, and Elton Wiley also working in geography at UBC. There's brochures with more information about individual people available, and also the rest of the program. The next program I'll just mention is on Friday night. We have a series of video screenings that Sabina Bitter curated, all dealing with issues of housing at the Gallery Gachet starting at 7 p.m. So Neil will speak, and then we'll have 10 minutes with responses and contextualization from the other people. And we want to open it to kind of general discussion and debate, because one thing we've been aiming for in all of the events is to have kind of a meeting of different positions around notions of housing and kind of the fate of the city and the shape of the city, the right of the city, as we move towards the date of the 2010 Olympics. So we do see this as a civic project, and totally welcome all discussion and debate. So just allow me to introduce Neil Smith, who is the distinguished professor at the Graduate Center at the City University of New York, the CUNY Graduate Center, and also the founder and former director of the Center for Place, Culture, and Politics. His books, which have been consistently influential, include Uneven Development, Capital, Nature, and the Production of Space, The New Urban Frontier, Gentrification in the Revanchist City, American Empire, Roosevelt's Geographer and the Prelude to Globalization, and recently, The Endgame of Globalization. Along with providing an introduction to Henri Lefebvre's The Urban Revolution, he's also been associated with such magazines as Social Text, Capitalism, Nature, and Socialism, and also Society and Space. So from my position as someone who works with artists and writers, I found Neil's work to be enormously generative in providing a model for how space and social relations interact. Often in the realm that I work in, space is used metaphorically or seen as a static container for human activity. But the work that Neil has been central in provides us with a series of concepts and terms that are much more rooted in our own experience and collective production of space. From the concepts of scale jumping to explain where political action can take place, to the notion of scale bending, which locates a trajectory of politics, the concept of the urban frontier and its cultural and spatial role in gentrification. Neil's work makes space central to our understanding of social relations and, to me, provides answers to the sometimes overly wobbly concepts of space and society that we can get in literature. On a personal note, I've worked with Neil at the Center for Place, Culture and Politics, and I was incredibly struck with and continue to be influenced with his super generosity and the really generative structures and social relations that he sets up around himself. So specifically to the Vancouver Flying University and Sabina Helmet and I, we asked Neil to begin with a consideration of the idea of urban frontiers, an idea that may seem somewhat obvious to those of you who's followed his work and followed these particular debates, but one that we feel is especially vital at the moment in Vancouver. The continual production of new frontiers and also the continual production of pioneers to settle them. Pioneers arriving in Range Rovers with mortgages in hand, arriving in edgy neighborhoods as if they have no history, is an engine of gentrification and the visual politics of gentrification today in Vancouver. You know, tellingly, the frontier trope is also deeply embedded into Canadian literature, a literature that saw space as a problem. And the problem was that the immensity of Canada was seen as being empty and needed to be filled with something, and that something was to be history. And this problem of national space has been scaled down to the urban level, and we can see Canadian novels today turning to the city as the new space that also needs explanation, as if the city has been unwritten up to this point, and as if its complexity and texture can only become clear through standard narrative forms. But the right to the city, we declare, is political and cultural, and in fact, these two terms have to be even more deeply embedded and deeply fused. Otherwise, the city we get will not be the city we imagine, but the city already visualized and narrated in official literature and in developer dream images. So with that brief introduction, I'd like to turn it over to Neil Smith and our panel. Thank everyone for coming.